Today we're getting experimental with cranks. This is one of my favorite bikes, the Spot Rocker, and I recently put some beautiful eeWING titanium cranks on it. These cranks get a lot of attention because they're beautiful, they're titanium, they're exotic, and they're super expensive. Before I put them on, a few friends said, you are going to notice how stiff those are instantly. And I have, and I've actually been riding this bike a lot, and it's been beating me up a little bit more than normal. And I've been thinking, I wonder if the cranks have something to do with that. I might be crazy, but I think the stiff cranks might be beating me up a little. So today we're going to get experimental. We're going to do a lap on the titanium eeWINGS, and I'll tell you what I think about them and how they ride. Then we're going to come back and swap on my 5-dev aluminum cranks to see if the stiffness is noticeable and what the difference feels like, if any. There may be no difference, but I'm curious and I really want to know the answer, and I know some of you do too. This is my personal bike, the Spot Rocker. Every once in a while, I ride a bike for review that is so special, it haunts me. After I sent this back to Spot, about a month later, I was losing sleep at night wishing I had one of these back, and I called Spot and I placed an order and I bought one. This bike is super special. I'm not affiliated with Spot. I just really love this rocker. We got it set up really cool today. Gulo wheels with carbon fiber spokes. Ultra Boutique. We've got a review on those coming soon with these beautiful titanium eeWINGS. It weighs in at 26 pounds, but here on Hardtail Party, we focus more on having fun on the trail than weight or watts or time or KOMs. We're here to just have fun on the trail and compare stuff. Let's go see what these eeWINGS ride like. Oh, it's a beautiful day in Sedona. About 65 degrees. It's perfect right now. So both of these cranks are 165, and I'm running absolute black oval chainrings on both of them. That's my go-to chainring. I love these absolute black oval chainrings. When I reviewed this bike, it wasn't a stiff bike, but for some reason, it's been feeling stiff lately. And I think it's because of these cranks. But today we're going to find out if it's in my head or if there really is a difference. These cranks make this bike feel racy though. Oh, this bike is so good. Picking a little bit of a rocky trail here so I can get a lot of vibrations to my feet. Oh, this bike is a dream. Rocket ship, it's so fast. And these cranks, when you do get on it and put power down, you do notice it. It kind of like the difference between a stiff hardtail frame and a compliant one. I remember when we were kids, we all wanted the profile BMX cranks, those 3-piece cranks. And everyone just said, oh, they're the best, they're the stiffest cranks around. I weighed like 80 pounds. I couldn't flex the most noodly cranks, but man, marketing works and I wanted them and I got a set. When you couple these cranks with the super efficient pedaling feel of this bike, it's pretty unreal how fast you can accelerate on this thing. And I think more of it is the frame than the cranks, but they definitely lend themselves to that feel as well. So on little climbs like this where you want to just sprint up them, that's where a stiff bike, stiff wheel set, stiff cranks really come into play. And it just transfers that energy into forward motion. In the mountain bike world, we get a little bit obsessed. Okay, a lot obsessed with stiffness. A lot of that has to do with marketing. And that makes us kind of equate stiffer with better always. But it's not always better. If you think about it, run your tires at 50 PSI. They'll be stiffer. There'll be less flex, less deflection. Why don't we run our tires at 50 PSI? Well, because ultimate stiffness and efficiency isn't the name of the game. It's a really interesting balance. On hardtails, we have really good energy transfer because we don't have any suspension in the back soaking up our energy. The rear suspension's better than locked out. It's directly connected. And that makes them real efficient for climbs and sprints. But efficiency isn't always better. There are some climbs on my full suspension I climb better than on my hardtail because the hardtail's so stiff and the full suspension rear wheel can track the ground and find traction. So we have a really interesting relationship with stiffness and compliance and traction and suspension and movement. It's funny, we hardtail guys seem to seek the most supple ride. Unless you're an XC racer, then you just put up with absolutely punishing ride for a faster time. And full suspension guys are the opposite way. They're going for stiffer and more efficient because their suspension does that work. Well, we don't have rear suspension to do that for us. So we're always seeking out more compliant or supple wheels, frames, handlebars, all that stuff. Man, these cranks and this bike are such a combination. It's so much fun. Maybe it's in my head, but I do feel like these cranks are a little snappier under acceleration than the SRAM cranks that came with it. But that could totally be placebo. We'll see. I do remember on my first ride just thinking, man, those are efficient. So on smoother trails like this, I don't know if it's going to make a huge difference. Might as well go stiffer, I think. Man, this is so good. Just carries so much speed. You combine a stiff bottom bracket area with stiff crank, and man, like, these are climbs that most people sit and spin, and this bike just flies up them. We're pumping uphill because this bike just wants to carry momentum. My goodness. Yeah, these cranks do play into the spirited sprinting nature of this bike. I always wondered, do stiff cranks make it for a stiffer ride on a bike? Or does it not matter because the frame will flex? And it's not like I've ever felt a crank flex. 99% of the cranks out there all feel the same to me. Is it worth it for $1,000 cranks? Absolutely not. However, these will last you 20 years. And if you like buying quality stuff that lasts forever, that you can trade from bike to bike, you know, it may pay off. They're light, they're beautiful. People notice it if that's something you care about. Are they worth double the price of the 5 devs, which are already on the upper end of the spectrum? We're gonna find out today. This is a slow and steady climb. It's not real punchy. And I don't really feel like super stiff cranks are really an advantage here. It's not hurting, but you don't really notice them. When you're just kind of spinning like this, I feel like a crank's a crank. Whether it's the cranks or the wheels or this frame or all of the above, and I suspect it's all of the above, this bike is an absolute joy to pedal. Fun lap. Nothing like a parking lot crank swap. I'm getting pretty used to these. Probably do more crank swaps in parking lots than in my shop. One thing I don't love about these cranks is how little the spindle sticks out, and to get your spacers on, you're usually putting them on here, and it's just a little tricky getting that lined up on the install. That could be improved, I think. Running wheels, manufacturing, angular contact bearings. I run those on all my 30 mil cranks. Love those things. Neither of these cranks are inexpensive, but you can buy 2 pair of 5 devs for 1 pair of eeWINGS. Those eeWINGS are over $1,000. I think these are $4.99, but I've got a discount code for you guys if you want to get these ones cheaper. I also have a video where I went to the factory and saw how these were made. That was pretty cool. If you haven't seen that yet, go check it out. All right, we got the 5 dev cranks on there. Same crank length, 165 with the Absolute Black 32 oval. They're slightly heavier and you can feel it in your hand. I don't know if I'll feel it on the trail. Let's go see how they ride differently. I don't know, still kind of bumpy. Still feels like a carbon hardtail on a bumpy Sedona trail. I don't know, I might be crazy, but I feel like these are not quite as harsh. Oh, I might be crazy. I feel like the eeWINGS sprint just a little better. It could just be the weight. I don't know. Wow, that's interesting. It almost feels like these spool up just a little. I might be going crazy, but it feels like it takes 2 to 3 revolutions to get them like really spooled up. I don't know how else to describe it. Whereas the eeWINGS seemed like the instant I stepped on it, they were there. I did not expect to feel a difference, but I think I do. It just feels a little tiny bit less jarring. Man, I kind of want to geek out with some nerd friends now. I mean engineers, sorry. And let you guys, it'd be fun to do a flex test and see if these do flex a little more. I do feel the ride is smoother. I'm not feeling them flex, and they don't feel inefficient. But after being on those eeWINGS, those do feel a little crisper under pedaling. Interesting. Very interesting. If I had 2 identical bikes back to back, I'd be able to tell within 30 feet. On the climbs, I prefer the eeWINGS a little. And on the descents, I prefer these. Wow, that's fascinating. They can't be flexing much, if at all. Wonder if the hollow design of this allows it to absorb vibrations differently? I don't know. Weird. I did not expect that. I mean, when I first got on the eeWINGS, I noticed they were crisp. I didn't think it'd be this noticeable though. Now I want to compare these to like some GXs, see if I can tell a difference. This bike still has a sprinty nature. Still plenty quick. It's definitely less harsh. Wow. Holy cow. Yeah, way less chatter. Interesting. I really do think there's a difference. And I think it's just going to come down to what you want in a crank. I think for XC racing, if I had the budget, those eeWINGS do have a slight performance advantage. And I think if I was building a shreddy hardtail or building on a stiff frame and I wasn't racing, 5 dev all the way saved my body some. I definitely think the joint pain I've been feeling this past month has been due to those eeWINGS. Wow. And let's be honest, Sedona's not the best place for a hardtail. It kind of feels like a heavier tire casing. We're still cooking, we're not going slow. And on the downs, I actually feel more in control. Don't get bounced around quite as much. Now I want some super high res camera to see if I can see any flex when I'm pedaling. That'd be fun. On a full suspension, the only downside to the eeWINGS is the cost, because your suspension will take that all out. At least that's my theory. I haven't tried them back to back yet. But on a hardtail, I am just astounded at what a difference it's making. This bike feels noticeably more compliant now, even though it's not the bike, it's the cranks. This has a little bit less of that sprint up everything attitude than it did with the eeWINGS. Part of that's because I'm tired, but these still sprint well. Yeah. I just feel like that first and second pedal stroke on the eeWINGS, you really feel it. And then once these get spun up, they feel the same. But that initial burst on the stiffer cranks rockets it forward ever so slightly. Yeah, I'm getting bounced around less. Feels like my tires have 1 to 2 psi less. I actually feel like I have a little more traction. What an experiment. That blew my mind. What a difference there was. I love getting experimental and trying things back to back. That was way more noticeable than I thought. I've never thought of cranks as being supple, but today I do. This kind of reminds me of my Banshee Paradox with those cutouts that allow it to flex. And I'm sure that wasn't a design feature, and a lot of people want stiff cranks, but I'm actually surprised at how much these 5-dev cranks change the ride feel. Without a doubt, those Cane Creek eeWINGS are snappy, and the instant you put power in, it translates to forward motion. It's kind of what I feel on some really stiff XC bikes with a stiff section here. It allows it to transfer that power forward. The 5-devs weren't noodly, and I didn't feel the flex. They just didn't have that instant snappy feel immediately. Once I did about 2 pedal strokes, they caught up, and then they felt very similar. But the eeWINGS definitely have an extra snap to them. So is it worth an extra $500 for that snap? Like most things in the mountain bike world and in life, paying double does not get you double the performance. For instance, the Team Marin bike, the whole bike is the cost of just this frame, and it's 95% as good. Is the Spot Rocker worth paying double for 5% more? It may be if it's your dream bike or if it's in your budget, but for budget reasons, no, that's not dollar for dollar. You don't get that much more bang for your buck with this. But if you're looking for that cutting edge and you want to tailor your ride a specific way, if you want a snappy instant acceleration at the cost of a harsher ride, those eeWINGS are the way to go. If you don't care so much about that and you want a softer ride, these 5-dev cranks offered a noticeably softer ride. My body feels less beat up after the second lap, which it should be the other way around because I'm more fatigued now anyway. That was fascinating. If you want to pick my brain one-on-one and compare bikes or components or cranks or forks or wheel sets, I do that over on Patreon. I'd love to help you over there. And if you're looking for some of these 5-dev cranks or their stems or pedals or other products, I have a 5% discount code in the description below. So I've got both cranks. Which ones am I going to leave on this bike? I think I'm going to leave the 5-devs on because I was getting beat up with the Cane Creeks on here. But I think if I were entering an XC race, I'd swap those eeWINGS on just for the race, get beat up a little bit more, and then swap back to these as my daily driver. It just depends on if you want the absolute most efficient, snappiest feel, or if you want a little bit more forgiving feel on the trail, or if you'd rather have 2 pair of these over 1 pair of the eeWINGS, or like 4 pair of GX cranks. So you don't need to spend a lot of money on cranks. And I used to think, why would anyone spend $1,000 on cranks? That is like the worst place to spend money on your bike. It's fortunate to see that there was a performance benefit to those more expensive cranks. And like most things in life, paying double doesn't get you double the performance, but sometimes it does get you a little bit more. In this case, it also came at a cost of that harsher ride. So it really depends on what you're going for. I think they're both beautiful cranks. I think they both make your bike really stand out from the crowd, but they have different aspects to them, and it just depends on what you're looking for. You guys are awesome. Thanks for getting experimental with me. I'm curious, what experiments do you want to see next? Thanks for watching. There's a party in the mountains, and you're invited.